Hello and welcome to Nashville Savvy. I'm your host, Megan Liepert-Seedlick of the Pamphleteer. Of course, I am not in my usual digs. Okay, I'm not in Nashville today. I'm in Murfreesboro. I'm getting my car looked at because I'm about to go on a road trip and I want to make sure that I don't crash and burn anything in there before I get to my destination. So, thanks for joining me on this beautiful look. I got change in fall leaves behind me and everything this beautiful fall day. Hopefully it won't get too windy on here. I got my producer G telling me if it starts crackling too much because of the wind, and my audio always does weird stuff. You guys know that. So thanks for sticking around. First, we're going to roll right into it. We had a Metro City Council meeting this week, but before I talk about that at all, I want to talk about something that came up last week from the mayor's office. Your input into Metro's Nashville Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan. Okay, and it sounds exactly like what it is, which is, Metro's plan to fight the impending doom of climate change. Now, the interesting thing is there's a couple pieces to this that are interesting. One, Freddie O'Connell, we know, is somebody who is really pushing for some, I guess he wants to see some reforms. He had a list of 15 fixes that he wanted to do starting on day one that he hit office as mayor. One of them was to convert all of Metro buildings to 100% solar in 3 years, which seems like a very big feat. And obviously it's going to cost money from somewhere, somehow. And to be honest with you, that's a whole other issue besides this climate and adaptation and resilience plan. So he got basically passed the baton from the Cooper administration. As soon as Cooper walked into the office in 2019, he ended up signing on to this thing that was created by the UN called the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. This is something that was put forward by General, I'm going to say this wrong, Ban Ki-moon, and of course Mike Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City. So you can only imagine what this type of covenant of mayors about climate and energy change could entail. So out of that Cooper administration signing on to that came this creation first of an oversight ad hoc sustainability advisory committee. Then they came up with a climate action plan in 2021. And now they are doing this final climate adaptation and resilience plan. And they're asking for your input. Of course, it's been years that they've been looking at this, getting input from hundreds of stakeholders in the area, as well as all the 50 plus metro departments, and how they think that we should be being more proactive in how we fight climate change. They're letting you look at this 170 plus page plan and give your input over the next month. Now, they did do 2 meetings yesterday. They're recorded. They're out there. You could look for them on the Metro YouTube, where they actually gave a little bit more background information regarding what's gonna. Oh, hold on. Let me mess with my audio. They did 2 meetings yesterday, updating people on what's actually going on with this resiliency plan and what's actually in the paperwork. I would encourage you to skim through it yourself. It is kind of lengthy, but it does give you an idea that they're going to be willing to incentivize some of these things, especially with tax breaks, a PACER program. They're going to be willing to create new code, new legislation, they're going to be passing laws and stuff to incentivize some of these building practices to convert buildings into sustainable, energy efficient buildings. Now, does anybody hate sustainable energy? I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe there are some real haters out there, probably people who just are sick and tired of the rhetoric. But the truth of the matter is that we have looked at incentivizing specifically solar energy We've seen it happen where it's companies have tried to incentivize it here in Middle Tennessee, and it just does not work simply because the incentive structure that's pushing for this stuff is outpacing innovation, and there's no reliability on especially some of the batteries that are needed for solar energy and other sustainable energy alternatives such as solar, wind, etc. So that's one of the big issues. We saw that with a company called Pink Energy. They're not from here, they're out of North Carolina, but they did come and sell some very expensive paperweights here in Middle Tennessee. I love to call it that. Somebody who actually converted their house or partially converted it to solar. Once Pink Energy, who sold them this solar panel and everything, once they went bankrupt, they went radio silence on all their customers. And one of the customers was like, now I'm stuck with this like really big, expensive paperweight on my roof. So I don't know what to do with. And if that doesn't metaphorically encapsulate some of this innovation that is not there yet, it's just not there, that they're trying to incentivize and push forward. It's just funny that this is like one of those things that keeps popping up as far as what we're doing in Metro Nashville. Of course, the biggest thing right now is crime rate keeps increasing. People are feeling increasingly terrified in their own neighborhoods. They're looking around at speeding cars and drag racing and just basic violent crime going up. And we're talking about putting solar panels on the Metro building. So you can go online and give your input. You can go right to the Metro website and look up the Nashville's climate adaptation and resilience plan. It's long and lengthy. You could look. I have some of the links up on my Twitter. We also covered this, of course, on the pamphleteer.co this week. So that's my short, long spiel about the Nashville Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan. We're going to move on. So I was expecting a crazy kind of like, I kind of wanted it to be like a crazy knockdown, drag out fight during council. Maybe it's just me morbidly wanting a little bit more entertainment as I'm watching these these long Metro City Council meetings, but it really was pretty boring. It was pretty straightforward on Tuesday night. The meeting ran about 3 hours long. They went through a slew of appointments. So we do, even though it was a little controversial, Metro is keeping Wally Dietz as the lead counsel law for Metro. We also, of course, appointed a bunch of temporary and permanent appointments to committees and stuff like that. We have a list of that on my rundown that I gave yesterday, if you want to look at that. I'm not going to get into some of the controversy of some of the appointments on here, but we will eventually tap into it because it's funny how we're seeing two things happen. We're seeing people doling out positions to, like we always do, to people that they like, who are their friends in Metro. And then we also see the mayor reappointing a lot of the old guard, people that he's worked with before in the past. Even though we had this new administration, we're using a lot of the same people that have been working in Metro for years and years and years. So that was how we started out the meeting. Then we went into some of the more contentious pieces of legislation. But I'm not going to touch on we're not going to touch on the SROs because until we get into Metro Mayhem. But I will say one of the more entertaining pieces, bills that came forward, was a bill about LPRs. So noticeably, if you've been paying attention to stuff when it comes to the LPRs in Nashville, we just ended a pilot program where we set up, I think it was like 100 different cameras around Davidson County. And basically those cameras are stationed in a single place, or they're going to be like on a, I don't want to call them mobile, but they could kind of set up, if you've ever gone across the bridge here in downtown Nashville, sometimes they set up an LPR to scan license plates as you're going through there. So you could kind of mobilize some of these permanent LPRs. But for the most part, they're at intersections and stuff like that. The pilot program ended. MMPD gave their report. It seems like they are really happy with the outcome of the placement of these LPRs. It's helped them recover stolen vehicles. It's helped them with a lot of their crime issues when it comes to finding people who have outstanding warrants. It's helped with retrieving drug paraphernalia, stolen guns, et cetera, et cetera. They like it. Of course, they like it. It's a good tool for police. But of course, this is a contentious topic among people who, A, don't like to be surveillanced by the government. That's one side of the argument here against LPRs. And the other side of the argument is a lot of people who are advocates for illegal immigrants. You know, they don't like that this could potentially be used to find illegal immigrants, and ICE can use these LPRs to help find illegals and take them, you know, out of communities and such. So those are the arguments against LPRs. It's a very contentious topic, and notably, since the pilot program ended, the council hasn't actually addressed this yet. So they haven't passed anything either to establish the program permanently where we keep all the LPRs, or to be like, you know what, we don't want any LPRs. Like, great, we're glad you did the pilot program, but no thanks. They haven't passed anything to say either way what way this is going to go, which is kind of funny. So we're in limbo, and this piece of legislation that was put forward, I think it was by Porterfield, Emily Benedict, and there was one other person. I think maybe I'm not really sure who the third person is. We'll go back and look, but they brought forward a piece of legislation essentially saying, like, telling MNPD to pack up their crap. They're leaving out some of these LPRs and some of the signage that said, you know, if LPRs were somewhere, and this bill is asking them to, you know, since we haven't decided on whether or not we want this program, we want you to pack up all your equipment in the meantime. So I was kind of this passive aggressive bill that I found really funny that passed on consent on first reading. So now we're going to go to local corner. So getting out of for a second, we're going to get out of this Metro City Council meeting and go into local corner. So my local corner for the week, last week on Friday, I went and visited the Attorney General in his office in his building, in the building downtown that he works out of. And I thought you guys would like a couple things. One, he gave me a few book recommendations, and I know we have some followers that are huge history buff people. He's really getting into, I guess, like uncovering a lot of the history of Tennessee in general, and trying to understand the deeply rooted political undercurrents that go on. I mean, he's lived here and worked out of Memphis, but he's really deep diving into that stuff. So he showed me these two books that he's reading right now. I've got them up on the screen if you guys want to screenshot it. So those are two of the books that he's reading right now, just to get a little bit more background of Nashville history. So I wanted to share that, like a little AG reading list. I hope that he will be okay with that. I don't know if we have it in here, but I also wanted to show you, is there an, oh, okay. So he also had this on as well. I got a kick out of this, y'all. He had a Tolkien version of map version. I don't know how to make that little part 2 slide thing go away. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. He had this on his wall. It was just so cute to me that he had this map of Tennessee drawn up like a Tolkien map of Middle Earth or whatever. So let me check on my audio real quick. So that's local corner for today. A little bit of AG office goodies that I took back with me. Now, if you've never been in that building, it's worth trying to get, you know, go in there and walk around. Of course, when you go into the AG's office or the governor's office or anywhere, they get to, some of the art that they get to have is on loan from the archives from the Tennessee State Library. So you could see kind of the personality of these people who are in office, depending on what kind of art they pick for their walls and stuff like that. I'm going to try to put together a video of some of the stuff that I saw when I was in the AG's office. That was nice. But it just gives you a sense of history. The buildings are beautiful. Some of these old buildings are just gorgeous. So if you ever get a chance to hop in, stop by and visit some of these historic buildings, our state buildings, our Capitol, you should definitely do it. Moving on to Metro Mayhem, which is, I mean, it's kind of hilarious, but it's also kind of ridiculous. I want to start off with, I know where I'm going to end, but we're going to start off with Ginny Welsh. So I'm going to just add this to
simply upping the MNP budget once again. We give MNPD everything that they want all the time. We budgeted money for SROs. It's in the budget. That money stays with MNPD. And right now, once this comes in, it pushes that money out that MNPD could buy weapons of mass destruction if they want. And we, who control the budget, have no say over where that money is going.
Okay, so there's Ginny Welsh. We're talking about SROs because the council this week was deciding once again whether or not to take money allocated by the state to help fund SROs in MNPS schools. So I don't know if you guys caught it, but she straight up was like, they could, if we let MNPD take this $3 million, now they have a $3 million surplus that they could do God knows what with. They could be buying weapons of mass destruction. I mean, it was really funny. I think that she kind of took it back as soon, like in her mind, it looked like she kind of like regretted saying it. But this just goes back to show you that the defund the police sentiment is still really prominent, especially within our Metro City Council. It hasn't gone away. Some people say that it's gone away, but it hasn't. It's still there, and they get really upset when MNPD gets whatever money that they want. Basically, this SRO money was coming from the state. It was part of a solution, or part of one of the solutions, as an answer to the tragic Covenant shooting that obviously happened in March. And what they essentially what they did, the MNPS, which is a school, their school board decided to put SROs in every middle and high school. I think that they were basically already in every middle and high school. They did not want to put them in elementary schools because they claim that it creates I've heard a couple different people say that it's create this like pipeline to prison. Okay, that if you put SROs in schools, that it's like basically turning the school into a prison, and it's creating this school to prison pipeline. I mean, it's a bunch of hooey. That's extreme. That putting somebody who's in there to protect you. Also, not only that, build a good rapport. Some of these places, some of these student bodies don't have a good relationship or don't know anybody who's a police officer. And a lot of times placing SROs in schools helps create that type of relationship where young kids feel like they can go to the adults that could help them, including police officers, like their SRO in their school. I digress. I'm just going off on my own opinion about this, but during the council, there were arguments for and against taking this money from the state. Now, the kicker is, I think I might have mentioned it before, we definitely mentioned it in the pamphleteer, was that basically we're not, regardless of what happens, if we decide to take this money, it only helps pay for the SROs that are already going to be in MNPD schools. MNPS schools. So you're not, by voting against taking this money, you're not saying, I don't want SROs in schools. And by voting for this money, you're not saying, I want SROs in schools. You're just making a decision about whether you're going to accept the monies from the fund provided by the state or no. Now, I want to play another clip. This is Delicia Porterfield, because the conversation
plan to
into one. Oop, go. We can go ahead with it. Go for it.
I plan to speak on this, but after hearing some of my colleagues, I just couldn't stay seated. Councilwoman Sora actually stated a couple of things that I had written down. We asked for gun reform, plain and simple. We asked for it. We demanded it. We marched. We protested. We cried, and we got money for police officers in schools in response to the demand of parents, to the demand of students, to the demand of teachers, to the demand of educators. Yes, this is a financial decision. There is no amount of money that is worth trading in your values. And for me, this is a value-based decision. I understand that voting this down does not change SRO officers in schools, but as a mother of a public school, high school student, SRO officers in schools do not make me feel safe, nor do they make my child feel safe. I've talked to several students about this issue. Granted, I've not talked to all 70,000 students in MNPS or how many students we have, but I've talked to several students on this issue. Students are split on the issue. There are some students that do feel safer. There are many students that don't feel safer. Not all communities feel safer with additional policing and over-policing.
All right. So you can tell that she and many others were really willing to make this into a moral high ground issue. It's not even though it was a fiscal decision, and there were many council members that I'm not going through on this, but that did make that very clear that that's how they looked at it. It's, they're trying to steward the money that is coming in and trying to do a good job stewarding that money. Many reasonable people on the council made that point. But she and others, you'll see on the next map when we show you who voted, are willing to just die on this hill of that. If it's dirty money, if it's not gun reform, if they're not going to pass laws restricting ownership of guns, that's the only policy decision that we wanted in response to this tragic shooting. That's the only thing that would satisfy us. You heard her say that we went up there, we screamed, we cried, or whatever they said. Now, the problem with this sentiment, of course, this is a politician doing her job. Don't get me wrong. So as much as I get on here, Delicia Porterfield is doing her job, representing her constituents and saying what she has to say, using the soapbox, because that's why she was voted into her position. People wanted her to go do that. That being said, when you pretend that just because people showed up and cried on the steps of the Capitol because they wanted gun reform as a policy response to a tragedy, a true tragedy that's despicable, unspeakable, really. Just because you only saw people show up and cry on the court steps wanting gun reform doesn't mean that that's the majority of the opinions of people who have voted for the legislators who are now making the decision on the behalf of their constituents across the state. You can't just pretend that whoever cries the loudest gets to win, and that's kind of what this argument is that, oh, we came and we cried and you ignored all of us. Well, that's not really true. Many of the legislators in the majority of the state were listening to their constituents and voted with their constituents, and that's what was represented at the state level. Now, of course, in this council body, it's a little bit different. We have a much more progressive Metro City Council, and of course, Davidson County is much more progressive in who they choose to represent them, and that's how democracy works, y'all. So it's just funny that they keep pushing back against the state to the point where they won't even take free money. But you got to give it to them. If they're going to stand on a principle, at least they're going to, in this situation, they're willing to reject the money. Okay. Now let's pull up this map. I want to pull this map by a very young man who, I think his name is, Trent Benge. I don't know if that's how you say that, his last name, but he's a young man who not only goes to Metro City Council meetings, and tweets about it and is active in campaigns, but he's also spoken, like he's gotten up and spoken on the behalf of things that he wants, and which is really, for somebody like me who goes in there, of course you want to see people engaged and involved, and it's really exciting. It does point to something else though that's happening. The progressive wing is really recruiting Gen Z. And this should be of interest to everybody throughout Tennessee. Gloria Johnson is actually somebody who's really tapping into this during her during her campaign and into the campaign elections that were happening right here in Nashville, Davidson County for mayor. She was recruiting Gen Z to door knock and do some social media posts and stuff like that for herself during her campaign. She's doing it, but she's also helping groups across the state basically recruit Gen Z to come and help with these progressive campaigns. And that's something to take note on, especially when this young man, he's posting this type of stuff, and then I'm using it for my podcast. So he put together this map of the votes that happened during the SRO vote, and it kind of shows you the red, of course, was who voted against taking the money. The green is who voted to take the money. The blue were abstentions. And then you're seeing the at-large members here, those who voted for it and those who voted against it, which the at-large members, their constituents make up the entirety of every person in Davidson County. So you could kind of see who and what areas voted which way, which I thought was a really cool way to look at this specific vote about SROs. And like I said, it's good to know these types of things, especially because this is a very fiscal decision that people decided to make a very political statement about. This also gives us insight into the progressive where the progressive camp, where the lines are drawn, who are going to be the most hard line on some of these issues of like, they're not willing to compromise at all if they don't get 100% of what they want, versus those who are like, okay, you win some, you lose some, you have to work together on some things. Everything's not going to be just this like purity test of I'm only going to vote my conscience on this. Sometimes you do have to make a deal. Sometimes you have to come to the table and negotiate a little bit. So you're looking at this map, you can see that the progressive coalition might not be exactly what people who are in it think it is. You see a lot of green. You see a lot of people who are willing to vote to take that money. Now, this is just one of many. This is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to decisions. It's just like this just happened to be a very contentious topic. And I thought that this map did a really good job at showing the way that people did vote. So we did end up accepting that money from the state, despite our disdain for the state. I want to close out Metro Mayhem with this. I don't know if I love this or love that I think that this is hilarious, but this is a video that came out over the weekend posted by our new mayor, Freddie O'Connell. So let me just play it real quick. I kind of love it just because it's so ridiculous. So this was we should definitely make this we should make a comic strip and make him into a caricature. I just loved this. I loved this tweet. His Twitter has become like a very it's very personal. He's always talking about getting his kids ready for school. It's a very relatable Twitter. That's like his approach to doing this. So he's like the normal guy, the regular guy who just happens to be mayor, is the vibe that Freddie O'Connell is giving up. Of course, he got some flack for not coming out strongly denouncing Hamas after the attacks. He has since come out in support of the Jewish community, and he will be at, I think there's a Jewish festival coming up tomorrow night that he will be making an appearance at, and probably trying to make up for a little bit of the distaste people had since he took so long in reacting to the terrorist attacks that happened in Gaza. So that's your mayor. I think I want to close out. Can we close out with just that, playing that video? Thank you guys all for joining me. We're going to close out with the mayor one more time, and I will see you guys next week.
And you